Sunday School Under Quarantine presents Jeremiah and the Fulfillment of God's Prophecies. Some of God's prophets served in good times, like Solomon. Some of them served through good times and bad, like Isaiah. But one prophet served through times that were so bad, he became known as the weeping prophet. His name is Jeremiah. Remember the lesson on Hosea? Remember how God promised to send judgment to Israel? Well, at that time the nation was split in two kingdoms. The northern kingdom was called Israel, and the southern kingdom was called Judah. Israel had been carried away according to the prophecies in Hosea. It was terrible. Now Judah had witnessed the judgment on Israel and still decided to turn to idol worship just like Israel had, and God judged them in the days of Jeremiah. Today we will learn the story from Jeremiah's point of view. Jeremiah wrote two books in the Bible, one short and one very, very long. The short one is called Lamentations. It means weeping. In this book, Jeremiah pours out his heart before God because of all the really bad things he saw when the judgment of God fell on Judah. The long one is named after Jeremiah himself. Before Jeremiah's story started, the Lord had sent many prophets to warn Judah about their idolatry and the wicked practices of enslaving their fellow Jews. But what do you think? Do you think they listened? No, they did not. Now the time had finally come when God was going to judge the kingdom, and he chose to use a great king from far away named Nebuchadnezzar. Now Nebuchadnezzar was a powerful king with a very large kingdom. He ruled from a city called Babylon. In fact, Nebuchadnezzar ruled most of the known world at the time. Now you must remember that God does not delight in judgment, but in mercy. So when he sent Nebuchadnezzar against Jerusalem, he really hoped that the people would repent. But even as Nebuchadnezzar surrounded the city, the people hardened their hearts. God sent Jeremiah to speak to the people and warn them that there was no way out of the judgment, but that God would be gentle with them, even in judgment, if they would submit to Nebuchadnezzar and go willingly with him. But if they wouldn't, Nebuchadnezzar would break the city to pieces, kill many of the people, and take most of the rest of them captive anyhow. God promised that if they were willing to go into this punishment, he would bless them wherever Nebuchadnezzar took them. But they had many false prophets that told them that Jeremiah was a liar. They promised that Nebuchadnezzar would not hurt them. They said the siege would end soon. Little ones, you must be very careful of what you believe. Do not simply believe things because they make you feel good or happy. Instead, believe the truth of the Bible. Now Nebuchadnezzar did indeed take Jerusalem, and he didn't stop there. He turned the promised land into a desolate place. That means a wasteland. Not good for much of anything. Not for farming, not for ranching, not for business. All this painful rebellion made Jeremiah weep very hard. The destruction was everywhere. One of the other prophets was just a child when this happened, and he was taken to Babylon and made to serve the king Nebuchadnezzar. His name was Daniel, but we will talk about him in another video. We should all learn a lesson from Jeremiah's struggle with Judah. God puts authority in our lives like parents, teachers, and even our government to be a blessing to our lives. Sometimes they tell us things we don't like to hear, like, clean your room, take out the trash. As long as they tell us to do things that are not a sin, we should submit to them so God will bless us. Throwing a fit, believing lies, and refusing to obey will only get us into trouble with them and with God. Now Jeremiah lived a long life, but not long enough to see the judgment come to an end. He died in the hope that the Jews would return again to the land and once again flourish. He even told them that God promised it would happen that way. Before we leave this story, you should know what happened to some of the people that went into Babylon. They became entertainment for the Babylonians. In Psalm 137, their captors demand that they sing one of the songs of Zion in the meadow by the river. This was very hard. But the devil is not content with just taking away good things from you like home and family and church. He wants to make fun of you and laugh at you. When this happened to the Jews, they said they hung their harps in the willows so they could cover their faces in shame. We still use that saying today for whenever someone is really sad. We say they hung their harp in a willow. This is because the songs reminded them of their homeland and many family and friends they'd lost and the blessing of God that they had thrown away in their stubbornness. As you grow up, be careful not to throw away good things just because you're angry and not getting what you want when you want it. If you give sin a little space in your life, it will take over and leave you broken. Then your family and friends will weep for you just like Jeremiah did for his people. One last thought before we leave Jeremiah. God wanted the Jews to know that his will for them was good, even though the captivity was going to be bad. He told Jeremiah to buy a big field and have 2 copies of the deed made. One was to be presented in public before all the people. The other was to be placed in a pot, the lid would be put on, and then sealed. The jar was to be buried in the middle of the field so that it could be discovered when the Jews came back from captivity. The land would belong to Jeremiah's descendants. This was God's sign that the Jews would be buried in Babylon for a long time, but after 70 years he would rescue them from captivity and bring them back into the land. They would still be his people. Now, my friends, no matter where you find yourself in life today, know this: God's will for you is good. He wants you back just like your family does. He wants you to be with him forever. Let him save you so he can take you home to be with him forever. Thank you for watching.